welcome to Buddha and the Coach vlog, powered by Soul Performance Academy. I am your host, Dan Mickle. Buddha and the Coach is a weekly vlog focused on looking at the teachings of the Buddha in a coaching light. The Buddha and the Coach is proud to be sponsored by It's Called Normal Athletics. ICN Athletics makes the extraordinary ordinary through adaptive beach volleyball. Everyone should have the opportunity to enjoy and excel at the sport, and ICN offers the programs and education to make it normal for adapted athletes to play on any court. Help them make the beach volleyball court a place for everybody. More information or to make a donation to the 501c3, please visit icnathletics.com. Thank you, and they'll see you in the sand. And as normal, thank you to John and Dave and everyone at It's Called Normal Athletics. Again, check them out at icnathletics.com. All right, this week's vlog, lesson number 8. The Buddha says, those who are free of resentful thoughts surely find peace. And before we even get into that, we want to make sure that we know the difference between sadness and anger, where sadness is typically comes from being disappointed or hurt by others, and anger comes out of frustrations with ourselves. All right. So it's really important that we know the difference between sadness and anger and kind of what's going on. And how that comes into play is when we have these resentful thoughts, we need to know what we're being resentful of. Are we sad and resentful, or are we angry and resentful? Because that's kind of how we have to look at it, because most of the time when we're resentful, it's coming from anger. And that means it's frustration with ourselves. And that can really affect how we coach and how we do. Now, that's not to say we let the little things slide and we don't show emotion. But we have to ask ourselves, at what point are these thoughts of resentment and anger really going to help us? So we need to look at how we reflect. Is it worth getting upset about? And then how do we fix it? And I think a lot of times we lose sight of that. I think sometimes we have those moments where things are going really well, or we're training and it's working out. And then we get into a situation, maybe a match or a game, where the things don't really work out. We get angry. And then we make really bad decisions, whether it's punishing the players, making substitutions, doing weird calls. But we don't stop to look at, do we actually put everyone in the right place? Did we spend the time correctly? Did we maybe make it too easy in practice so that when it became, the wicked environment or the, crazy environment of competition, did it not work out? And we start to kind of get a little bit too angry about that, and we sometimes just want to throw out the whole plan and start again. Or other times we start to emphasize things that really didn't have too much to go into it. Maybe we take it out on the players a little bit too much, and they just weren't ready, or we didn't prepare them enough for it. But I think the key to this whole lesson from the Buddha is that we need to stop looking at it with so much emotion attached. We failed in what we wanted to do. Maybe it was a specific skill. Maybe we failed in the game. But we have to take the anger and the resentment and how we're feeling out of it and really start to look at it and figure out why it happened. And for me, that's the key of this whole lesson. It's not about getting rid of emotion. We don't want to be emotionless as coaches. We want to have that fire. What we don't want to do, though, is start to do the review, the reflection, and then make adjustments while we're still having those resentful thoughts or the anger going through of us. So we need to make sure that when we want to decide what went wrong, we're actually looking at it from a place of trying to actually figure it out, and not just from a place where we're venting because we're angry. And again, that can be really tough. A lot of times, maybe you're at an away game, or even, it's a home game. You get on the bus and you're angry, and you just start looking at the stats, or you start going through or watching the video if you have that available, or you go back to your office, or you get home right away and you start to work on what went wrong and how you're going to fix it. And what you find out is your method and how you want to fix it is probably a little bit different if you're planning it right in that moment, as opposed to giving it that time, letting it rest, getting rid of the emotion, getting rid of the resentful thoughts, the angry thoughts, and just looking at the data, out the emotion. This is what broke down. This is what went wrong. This is what we have to fix. Now be careful, because what I'm not saying is that emotion doesn't play into it, because emotion could be. It could be the emotions of your players that caused an issue. It could have been your emotions and you got caught up in the moment and you made a wrong substitution or called a wrong play. I'm not saying that emotions aren't a part of it and you shouldn't be, discarding emotions. I'm simply saying when you're looking at the situation trying to fix a problem or to plan and to better things, it's better to give it that space, give it that time to breathe, and look at it without those thoughts and issues. Those who are free of resentful thoughts surely find peace. Okay? Again, I understand that it can be really tough at times. You get blown out of a big game, you're angry, and you want to start fixing things right away. Best thing that you can do is take a breath, give it some time, and come back and look at it in a clear. Don't make those changes right away. Don't throw your lesson plans out. Don't scrap what you've been working on because it didn't work out in that moment. Free of those resentful thoughts, go back and look at it, figure out what's going on. Another great way to do that is just get another set of eyes on it to start with. If you really want to start working on it, have someone that's not involved, not so invested in your program, your team, look at this, say, hey, what do you think went wrong with this? What would you suggest? And then start to work on it. But I see it way too many times. And it happens a lot in situations where you have back-to-back games, where you're at a tournament and there's a lot of matches, you don't have a lot of time. You can't make those adjustments so quickly when things are going wrong, when it's a back-to-back event. You have to figure out, what is your process? How am I going to put my thoughts and feelings of what just happened on this match aside and start planning for the next one? Because too many times we will just throw out anything that's working. We'll make changes just to make changes because we're upset with the way that things went. Then it actually just continues that whole circle and makes things worse for the next match, game, tournament. What is your process to find peace? You need it first. I start out and we talk a lot about this negative, but it also happens in the positive, right? Sometimes we have too much emotion when things are going well. And it gets a little cloudy. And while that's not the same lesson, and I'm sure we'll talk about that down the road, it's almost the same concept. What we want to do is pretty much the same. We want to make sure that we get free of those resentful thoughts. Get away of thinking what this player did wrong or what you did wrong with the emotion part, and look at it from the technical and tactical aspect of what didn't work in that situation. Maybe it was the wrong play call. Maybe it was the wrong personnel. Maybe it was the wrong sub. Maybe the player didn't live up to the expectations that you needed him to. Those are all possibilities. But we were talking about, how can you find that peace as a coach and how can you work on it? Because if you're angry and upset with what just went on, you're not going to make the right decisions. Sometimes you have multiple days. You might play on Monday and then not play again till Thursday. Other times, maybe you have 30 minutes or 10 minutes in between games and you have to figure it out. And that's what you need to learn. You need to figure out how to get that inner peace in that quick time so you can look at it very judgmentally. It also happens if you have a deep bench, right? Maybe we should have played this player. I should have benched that person quicker. That's not the way to work at it and look at it when you're in the heat of the moment, having those thoughts running through. That is not a peaceful mind, and that's really what you need to be a successful coach. When you're making the major decisions that affect your team, you have to have a peaceful mind. That means that you have to be okay with the decisions. You know it may not always work out. You feel like you gave it the attention that was necessary to succeed or to do what you want to do. And then you work backwards and figure out why it did or didn't. All right, so there you have it. Lesson number 8 from the Buddha: those who are free of resentful thoughts surely find peace. This is Buddha and the Coach. I'm your host, Dan Mickle. Again, we are brought to you by It's Called Normal Athletics. Check them out at icnathletics.com. And as usual, share, like, comment. Let's start the dialogue. How do you, as a coach, find that inner peace in between games, in between matches, or when the things aren't working? How do you get rid of those angry thoughts so that you can look at the data and the facts and figure out how to make things work? That's what I want to hear in your dialogue. Put some comments below. Let's get this going. Peace, love, don't suck. See you all next week for the next lesson of Buddha.